Good morning and welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Katie Reed and I'm the sales team lead for Citron Hygiene in our Southern Ontario region. I'm joined today by my colleague Dan Gray, our senior account executive in the London area. As a global leader in facility hygiene, Citron Hygiene is in constant pursuit of innovation and technologies to enhance and improve our service and product offerings. And we saw a need to provide enhanced disinfection in the air in light of COVID-19. Building owners and managers want to provide an enhanced level of safety to tenants, employees, students, and guests. And those entering the facilities want to feel their work environment is safe. So we're excited to share that we have partnered with Surgically Clean Air on the Jade Air Purification System. So I'll get introducing Stéphane Boisvert from Surgically Clean Air. Stéphane will take us through a high-level overview of the Jade today. The purpose of this webinar is to give each of you a flavor of the system and how it potentially could aid your health and safety programs in your buildings. To the extent it can, we would be delighted to branch off with those interested for more concrete discussions with respect to your specific needs after the webinar. Just a quick housekeeping item. We have reserved some time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions you would like addressed, please feel free to chat them in the chat. Just make sure you have everyone clicked off so everyone can see the question. Or alternatively, you can ask them live by unmuting yourself at the end of the presentation. And we will go over those together. So with that in mind, Stéphane, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Katie. So as Katie said, my name is Stéphane. I'm from Surgically Clean Air. We are a proudly Canadian company. Let's just here. There we go. We are a proudly Canadian company. And ironically enough, it's a company that was conceptualized as a response to the SARS outbreak of the mid-2000s. And so in the infancy of the company, the founding partners had our air purifiers third-party tested, specifically on their ability to kill airborne viruses, bacteria, and fungus. And what they found through this third-party testing was that our air purifiers were able to kill and completely remove from the air in a matter of minutes the virus, the bacteria, and the fungus. So we very much are a company that specializes in the prevention of person-to-person virus transfer. So fast forward to today, we are in a number of industries. Dentistry has always been our biggest. And when you think of it, I mean, they use high-speed instruments and they drill, they work out of people's mouths. And so every so often, the US Department of Labor comes up with this ranking system of the most hazardous jobs in America. And dentistry, whether you are the dentist, the hygienist, the assistant, a specialist, it always ranks #1. And rounding out the top 5 in no particular order, it's dentistry, podiatrist, veterinarian, flight attendant, and anesthesiologist. And one thing that all 5 of those professions have in common is poor air quality. But we also work with other medical offices of all kinds, hospitals, and of course we work in education. So we are a preferred provider with the government of Ontario. Over 20,000 of the Jade air purifiers are in classrooms across the province. We work with professional sports teams, half of the NHL teams, NBA. I'll discuss the Raptors here momentarily, but we also work with retirement homes, obviously general offices, even residential. And of course, because of the pandemic, we are working with industries that probably never would have considered this in the past. So restaurants, movie theaters, even churches. So the Raptors are a really cool story. They've been clients of Surgically Clean Air for a number of years, and they went from being the sickest team in the NBA in terms of man games lost due to respiratory illness to being the healthiest. And in fact, the year that they won their championship, the gentleman on the far right that you see in the photo, that's our COO. And he went to visit the gentleman in the middle there. That's the head athletic therapist for the Raptors. I believe his name is Scott McCullough. And they were just chatting, and he said, we're pretty banged up right now, a lot of, strains and sprains, but nobody is getting sick. And in fact, at the time, Fred VanVleet, a point guard for the Raptors, was expecting a child, and they got a Jade for his, I believe it was his condo, just to keep mama and baby safe when baby arrived. So really cool story with the Raptors. And of course, other high profile clients, whether it be professional sports teams, a lot of high profile companies. You see there Walter Reed Hospital. That is where the former President Donald Trump was treated for COVID. So we do have a lot of really cool clients. And of course, in education, not just through the government of Ontario, but higher education, and of course, childcare centers, daycares, and whatnot. Okay. I skipped too far. So whenever you are in the market for an air purifier, whenever you're considering something like this, there are 4 really critical things that you want to consider, and it's what we refer to as the 4 pillars of air purification. The first thing is airflow. So how efficient is an air purifier? And that's always measured in CFM, or cubic feet per minute. So we had our airflow rates third-party tested for the dental community. They have to provide to their college specifically what CFM their air purifier is yielding, and therefore that will dictate the air changes per hour, or ACH, in their operatories. So airflow is essentially the efficiency of an air purifier. And unfortunately, there are a lot of smoke and mirrors in the industry, in the air purification industry, that is. A lot of air purifying companies will quote fan speed or free flow rate. And all that means is they're measuring the efficiency of their air purifier without any filters inside. So it's a misleading way to make an air purifier seem more efficient than it actually is. The second pillar of air purification is the sound level. Very, very critical. And unfortunately, it's something that often gets overlooked. An air purifier that is too loud will get turned down or off altogether. So as I mentioned, we do work a lot in education, but last year things got a little crazy, as you can imagine, and we were back ordered 90 days. And while we were selling into education, we couldn't get the units right away. And a lot of schools wanted air purifiers in their classrooms by September. So they went out and bought retail or just from other companies. And we're hearing firsthand now that a lot of teachers are turning the air purifiers in their classrooms off because the school board that invested in whichever company, they're just too loud. They didn't do their homework. And yet again, it's not really their fault because they were just trying to get their hands on anything they could get at the time. But the state of California, they're getting it wrong in terms of air purification because their whole emphasis is on what's called CADR, the clean air delivery rate, which is basically the maximum CFM that an air purifier can yield. And that's all great. An air purifier can have 1,000 CFM, but if it's at 70 decibels or even 60 or 65, no one is going to run it in a boardroom, a classroom. I mean, 65 decibels, I know that probably doesn't mean much to most of you, but 65 decibels is equivalent to having a hairdryer running in right beside you. That's 65 decibels. So we are able to filter at 312 cubic feet per minute at 48 decibels. So this air purifier behind me is running right now and you can't even hear it. I know it's hard to hear something through a video screen, but that's why we encourage on-site demonstrations and site assessments so that you can actually hear how quiet these machines are, because yet again, it's critical when you're shopping around for an air purifier. Third pillar of air purification are the technologies. So I always used to ask the question, if I was visiting, let's say, a prospective client, like, why am I here? Why did you agree to this meeting? And nowadays that question seems rather silly because everyone right now, the emphasis is we want to kill germs. We want to keep our staff safe and healthy. So you want to be using an air purifier that is proven to kill germs, and that's with germicidal UVC light, which we'll discuss momentarily here. And of course, the fourth thing is cost. And it's not just the upfront cost, but it's cost of ownership, cost over time. So if an air purification company, as I mentioned, the smoke and mirrors, if they're not forthcoming with all of this information that I've just discussed, whether it be their airflow rates, the sound level at every speed, and of course, cost of replacement filters, that's a red flag. Those things should all be transparent, and you should have full access to that information before making any investment. And we'll touch on a lot of those things throughout our discussion today. So all of our machines are standalone. I think I skipped ahead. Oh, there we go. All of our machines are standalone, which means there are no special hookups to your HVAC system, and there are no special electrical requirements either. Just wherever you can find a plug. And so all of our air purifiers have 6 stages of filtration. So I'll just quickly go over those with you so that you are aware of what exactly these air purifiers are doing. So the first stage, there are pre-filters, permanent non-disposable pre-filters that just get rid of larger particulate like dust. So you can see Jade in the background behind me here. The pre-filter in my home, I have a big white fluffy dog. As you can imagine, it will capture pet dander. So I just have to vacuum it off as needed, nothing to replace ever. The second stage is we are using hospital grade HEPA filters. And we had those third-party tested at virus-sized particles. So we had them tested for particle size of 0.1 to 0.2 microns. And just as a frame of reference, the size of the virus that causes COVID-19 is 0.12 microns on average. So it falls within the size range that we had tested. And what they found was that at that size, we have a 99.998% capture rate. So yet again, they are hospital grade and they're phenomenal filters. The third stage of filtration is our activated carbon filter. And what that is doing is absorbing, oh, skipping ahead again, there we go. It's absorbing gases, chemicals, and odors. So as you can imagine, right now, everyone, whether it be offices, medical and non, retail, everyone is sterilizing surfaces with cleaners and all kinds of chemical products to sterilize surfaces. Great for surfaces, not so good for air quality. So these air purifiers are able to get rid of all of the harmful chemicals that are in the air. Not to mention, any building will off-gas VOCs, volatile organic compounds. In your home, like my machine, because it's measuring air quality in real time, when we cook, the color will change, notifying us that it's picked up chemicals. The particle counter will shoot up, notifying us that it's reading something in the air that it doesn't like, but rest assured, it's able to filter all that stuff out of the air, and the levels will then return to normal. And of course, stages 4 and 5, and that's what makes our air purifier a medical grade air purifier. So we are using germicidal UVC light, and it reacts with a titanium dioxide coated plate, and it creates this chemical reaction known as photocatalytic oxidation, in which hydroxyl radicals are released. And what they do is they will disrupt the genetic makeup of, let's say, a virus. We always say viruses like to hitch rides. So it will attach itself to a piece of particulate. And the hydroxyl radical will then essentially prevent that virus from replicating, and then it dies. So this technology is used in hospitals all over the world to kill airborne germs. And this is no different. So yet again, this is a medical grade air purifier. And last but not least, and this is just a slide here just indicating how the photocatalytic oxidation works. Last but not least, our 6th stage of filtration is we are releasing negative ions into the air, which studies show increase oxygen flow to the brain, resulting in an improvement in mental alertness and productivity. So I've heard of this referred to as the casino effect. So misconception with casinos is that they're pumping the air full of oxygen to keep people awake, so they keep spending money. They're actually using negative ion generators to do that. We do it for more genuine reasons. We want to keep people productive. So those 6 stages, we are keeping people healthier and more productive. And so in 2019, Harvard released a study indicating just that. So they used buildings all over the United States and basically proving that when you improve indoor air quality, you are reducing absenteeism due to illness, and you're actually improving cognitive functioning and therefore productivity due to less people sick, and due to improved cognitive functioning, the productivity then increases dramatically. So those are our 6 stages. And as I mentioned, this machine does read air quality in real time. So you can see particle levels. You'll see if the machine is picking up any chemicals. They are quite sensitive. So as I mentioned, when we cook, it'll read that there are chemicals in the air. If someone is wearing too much perfume or cologne, it'll pick up on that. And of course, as I mentioned, any cleaners, if you spray Windex or even vinegar diluted in water, the machine will pick that up. And notify the operator that, hey, it's sensing chemicals, but it's able to get that out of the air. And because this is a medical grade air purifier, as you can see, they are touchless. So I can just wave my hand over it and it'll change speeds. So that you don't have to sterilize the machine like you would other medical equipment in an operatory every patient. So they are touchless. However, you can push a button to turn them on and off as well. And they do notify you when there are filter changes that are needed. So there's no guesswork. There's no having to change filters prematurely. The machine tells you with smart technology that it's time for a filter change. Okay, so whenever we consult with an office, anyone for that matter, one thing I like about this whole process, it is very much so a consultative approach, and it's not Citron Hygiene, it's not Surgically Clean Air saying, oh, well, you need X number of Jades. We refer to ASHRAE guidelines, and ASHRAE is the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. They are the North American authority on indoor air quality. So depending on who we're consulting with, if it's a medical office, ASHRAE's recommendation is to be yielding 4 to 6 air filtrations or air changes per hour, ACH, per hour. When we're consulting with a general office or even in education, generally the goal is 2 to 3 air changes per hour. So from there, it just becomes a real simple calculation where if we're able to obtain square footage and ceiling height, that gives us cubic footage. And then, as we know, we have the airflow rates of our air purifiers, which are third-party tested and proven. And then we can calculate what combination of products would yield the 2 to 3 air changes per hour in the case of education or general office. So we adhere to ASHRAE. It's not us coming up with some product combination. And this is just what I was referring to earlier. We're completely transparent with all of the information. So giving you the CFM and decibel level at every speed. And these are actually wrong, by the way. On speed 4, it's 55 decibels. Speed 3, which is what most people run the Jade at, the CFM levels are right at 312 cubic feet per minute, but that's at 48 decibels. So that would be, and yet again, I don't expect that to mean a whole lot, but at 48 decibels, that's like a quiet dishwasher. And all you ever hear is airflow. So it essentially becomes white noise and they become wallpaper. You don't even notice them. So they are exceptionally quiet given how efficient they are. The speed 4, we often refer to that as turbo. That was always meant to be used in a medical setting. So you know, healthcare practitioner is treating a sick patient. They're coughing, they're sneezing. Perhaps after that patient leaves the treatment room, the exam room, you can fire the machine up on turbo, and now you're cleaning at a very efficient rate of 406 cubic feet per minute. That is at 55 decibels. And then the room is nice and clean and sterilized before the next patient comes in. In education, you know, children are out at recess or they're in between classes, a teacher at their discretion can use the turbo function yet again during cold and flu season, just to quickly turn the air over more efficiently. Likewise in a boardroom, if you're pre-meeting, you can use the turbo function, and after the meeting, you can use the turbo function because people have congregated in a larger group and you want to quickly turn the air over. So the turbo function is there, but most people run the Jade specifically on speed 3. They do have a locking function, so they are tamper proof, and people just run them all day. So when the pandemic began, people's immediate inclination was, well, we need to put better filters into our HVAC system. And you had HVAC solutions with standalone air purification solutions butting heads and arguing over who is right. And it doesn't have to be that way. It should be a happy marriage between the two. So making inexpensive upgrades to your HVAC system and not having to overhaul the entire system. And so what I'm about to say, this is not Surgically Clean Air. This is not an HVAC systems opinion. This is right from the CDC, and we can provide you with this article. And it's basically an article on how to, for a company, a business, or an office, how they can ensure the health and safety of their staff as you gear up and have all these return to work strategies. So there are HVAC improvements that can be made, increasing the amount of outdoor air coming into a building. Before the pandemic, the narrative was the opposite. People, I should say, property managers, building managers, they would at times restrict the amount of outdoor air coming in the attempts of saving money on heating and cooling. Now it's the opposite. People realize that, you know, we want fresher air coming in, which keeps CO2 levels down. The higher CO2 levels rise, the more you get things like sick building syndrome, fatigue, and there's just a number of negative things that can happen when CO2 levels are elevated consistently. Another thing is not having the system run on auto. So it's turning on and off just to regulate temperature, having it run all the time when people are in the building. At night, people are not around, you can leave it on auto, but at least you have constant air circulation, which will improve ventilation. And of course, putting better filters into the system. And I think this is the next slide. Yes, so if you've heard of MERV 13, it's a huge buzzword these days because it's basically the maximum upgrade that can be made to an HVAC filter. But we need to put things into perspective. If people are doing this thinking that they're going to mitigate the spread of disease and keep people healthier, it's just not the case. So this is a chart right from ASHRAE, and it indicates that at a MERV 13, at 0.3 microns, it has a 50% capture rate. So if 100,000 particles are going through that filter, 50,000 particles are getting through. At 0.1 micron, the size of a virus, we have a 99.997%. For a virus, it's 99.997%. So you just really can't compare the two. And back to that CDC article, you know, yes, they do recommend MERV 13 upgrades, but they also recommend HEPA air purifier to actually purify the air that has germicidal UVC light. So people that are doing these MERV 13 upgrades thinking that, oh, well, we're trapping viruses, we're trapping germs, it's just not the case. You're basically throwing Smarties at a chain link fence. So it's a combination of HVAC upgrades with standalone air purification that have a HEPA filter, preferably hospital grade HEPA, so you know you're trapping viruses. And of course, with germicidal UVC light, you're killing anything that's left in the air. And I just mentioned the differences between our Jade HEPA filters, which are MERV 17, by the way, or H13 hospital grade versus, let's say, a MERV 13 filter that's in an HVAC system. And just if anyone is wondering why you can only do a maximum upgrade, anything beyond MERV 13, you start restricting airflow and you can blow the motor of the system, which would cost a lot of money. So MERV 13 is the maximum upgrade before you start causing more serious damage to your HVAC system. So this is a neat little, I guess, analogy, if you will, with Jade. Our COO came up with it, but let's just say, you know, you were glancing on, I don't know if people use Workopolis anymore or Indeed now, I guess, and you came across Jade's resume, and you know, the resume boasted that they can improve office productivity by even as little as 10%. You know, improve overall sense of wellness, give people confidence that they can come back to work and be in a healthy and safer environment. You know, you've lessened sick days. And of course you reduce cleaning costs because things are cleaner. And they're willing to work 24/7, and all for, you know, a few dollars a month. You know, would you hire Jade? And I guess many people would say, well, Jade, when can you start? So yes, we do have Jade in stock, thousands of them sitting in a warehouse right in Mississauga. So anyone that is interested, I think the first step is we can come and visit your space, have a look, and yet again, use the ASHRAE guidelines to determine what is the best solution given your space. And of course, you have the benefit of being able to see Jade in person, so you can really see how quiet it is. And yet again, I can't emphasize that enough, that airflow versus sound level is critical when you are considering air purification. If you ever visited our website or intending on visiting our website, you'll see in the top corner 4.9 out of 5 stars. If you click on that, it'll bring you to our reviews page. And there's got to be over 600 testimonials at this point, spanning across a number of industries, medical offices, general offices. But I mean, we get some really powerful stories. There was a dentist, I believe near Manhattan, that was not in very good health, and getting COVID would probably not be ideal. And that dentist had a hygienist that contracted COVID out in the community. And this dentist sat next to the hygienist for 3 days. She didn't know she had it, and he never got COVID. But more so with just regular cold and flu season, even sick building syndrome. There's countless people that have said, I don't take my allergy medication anymore. My chronic sneezing at work is gone. My chronic cough is gone. We've seen a reduction in sick days. So there's a company based out of Boston that invested in Surgically Clean Air, and they have 2 floors in an office tower. And they came back to us 6 months after, and they said, we've been tracking this. And since getting the Surgically Clean Air units in our office, absenteeism due to illness is down by over 20%. So you experience that added boost in productivity, and you look at that on a spreadsheet. You know, this company said we should have done this years ago. So it really makes sense when you look at it from that point of view. But I encourage you to check out our testimonials. There's a lot of really powerful stories there. And yeah, that's Houston. So that's a different testimonial than the one I was referring to from Manhattan. But we've had several testimonials where people have, it's kept them safe from COVID. But, you know, on a regular, you know, when things do normalize, you know, these do keep you a lot healthier during cold and flu season, and 12 months a year for that matter. Well, thank you so much. Now, I guess we will open up for questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Stefan, for the presentation, and obviously the attendees for your time. Obviously, the key goal we wanted to achieve today was to give you kind of an overview of a product that we're obviously very excited about, but that's going to make your space much safer. So with that being said, we are going to open up the floor to some questions. So if you do have any, please unmute your mic, and you're more than welcome to ask any, or type it in the chat. As we get going here, though, that we did have a couple write-in questions from some property managers that were unable to attend. So I'll ask those to you, and hopefully you can recover them, because you did such a great job that I know some of these are going to be a little repetitive. So one that came up from a gentleman with Europro was, how does the Jade air purifier compare to air purifiers that would be available to a consumer at a big box store?
Great question. So yet again, we never bash any competitors. All we do is we do the comparison using the 4 pillars of air purification. And I encourage anyone that is looking to purchase an air purifier to do just that. So if you're on a website, and those are the types of things that you want to look for: the efficiency of the air purifier, so airflow measured in CFM, the sound level. And unfortunately, a lot of air purifying companies are not forthcoming with that information. So if you see that an air purifier has 5 speeds, but they give you 1 decibel level, that's probably the decibel level at the lowest speed, which means they don't want you to know what it is on the highest speed, because you're probably not going to run it on that speed. And then, of course, technology. What is the unit doing? The average big box store air purifier will trap down to 0.3 microns. So yet again, no better than an HVAC filter would do. So if your goal is to stay healthy and mitigate the spread of germs, you're probably going to need something better.
Awesome. And some of the feedback we've had is that this system potentially obviously duplicates the efforts, given the investment that a lot of property managers have put into their buildings with their HVACs. I know you touched on that in kind of MERV 13. Can you just re-outline that, just so it kind of gives people peace of mind, why this isn't a duplication and in fact a necessary step to go with the Jade?
Yet again, right from the CDC, there are improvements that can be made to your HVAC. But if you want to purify the air, I mean, HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Nowhere in that acronym does it say anything about purifying the air. So if you truly want to make your air cleaner, then you need an air purifier to do that. And of course, with a medical grade air purifier, which has germicidal UVC light, you're not just trapping particulate and germs, but you're killing them as well. So you will see that, you and your staff are a lot healthier for it.
Awesome. And then we do have a question in the chat, and was it MERV 17 or equivalent filters in these units?
Yes. So our HEPA filters are considered MERV 17 or H13, hospital grade HEPA. So they are approved for surgical suites and applications like that. But we did have our HEPA filters third-party tested last year at virus-sized particles, which is 0.1 to 0.2. And at that size, we have a 99.99, depending on whether it was a virus or a bacteria or fungus, 99.997 or 99.998% capture rate.
Awesome. And if anyone has any other questions, I see Bonnie, you might have a question there.
Yes, I do. I run a childcare center, large childcare center. We have to fog twice a day because all of our children are under 4. And so will that, you were talking about that it reads the chemicals in the air. What happens with that at that point? It's just going to go off the charts with the fogging, I would assume.
Yes, it will. And we experienced this with our dental clients where they were using, foggers as well. And what they were doing was when they used the foggers, they would turn Jade off. And then once all that, the particles from the foggers, they settle on surfaces, then you just turn the air purifiers back on, because you want the fogger to do what it does without it just all being sucked in directly right away by Jade. So they would turn Jade off momentarily, and they typically did this in between patients. So I would assume that you guys would do this when the children are not in the room.
Right.
So
we do it when they go outside. Yeah. We have cleaners who fog the classroom when they go outside. And then so it's ready, because it's ready within 10 minutes and they're outside for an hour.
Yeah. So whatever whichever product you're using, what the recommendation is, like how long do the particles take to settle, or how long should people not be in the room for? That's the time that I would wait. And then once that's done, then you can turn Jade back on and allow people to come back in the room. Okay.
My second question is, we have sensory with the children. We're allowed to have sensory again. So we have sand play within the classroom. So of course you get that sand dust and other things that we have. So is that going to, we'll have to change the filter more often?
Nope. We've dealt with some pretty heavy duty applications. I've dealt firsthand with foot specialists, and I'm not going to go into detail what they do for a living because it's kind of gross. But as you can imagine, I've seen it before where after several months, you look at the filter and there's 1.5 inches of dust or particulate on the filter. So the consumables for Jade, it's all based on timing. However, let's say the first time you go to change the carbon filter, and that's after 4,500 hours. You know, you can, if you see that there's a lot of particulate buildup on the filter, just have to vacuum it off.
Okay.
And likewise with the pre-filter, if you see, and you know, every building is different. Some buildings are just dustier than others. If you see that there's a buildup, then you can just vacuum it off. But I mean, I've had discussions with my chief technological officer because our older models of air purifiers, they actually had electronic cells that trap particulate. So they carry an electrostatic charge, and then that's how they trap particulate. But over time, HEPA, believe it or not, actually gets more efficient at trapping particles, whereas the electrostatic cell gets least efficient because there's less surface area to have that static charge, and therefore less particles will stick to it. So HEPA actually remains just as effective, if not more, over time. So you don't have to worry about that. It's not an issue.
Okay. Yeah, because we change our furnace filters on a monthly basis, and they are, I could probably do them every 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
The furnace filters. We have 100 children within the building.
I mean, our HEPA filters are good for 8,700 hours. So,
Okay.
I mean, I run my machines in my home 24/7, and that'll typically last me about 1.5 years. So typically in education, you know, during cold and flu season, I've often said this, leave them running overnight if someone is sick. And that way you're constantly killing germs and cleaning. But I mean, most of the time you're turning them off on weekends and holidays. So they do last you quite a long time.
Okay, thank you.
Bonnie, one thing with Citron Hygiene too, in most cases, we work with however they want, but in most cases we have a service agreement. So you don't even have to worry about it. So every 6 months, sorry, there's someone cutting their lawn right next door and it's loud. I don't know if you can hear it. Every 6 months, we would come in and replace the carbon filter and vacuum off the HEPA filter for you as well. And the UV light and HEPA filter is changed out once a year, and that's in the price of the unit. So one less thing to worry about. Just
good. One less thing I have to do.
Because you don't think about that. Like when you're doing it monthly, your filter currently, that's one thing. But something like this, it's just when you don't have to do it that often, it's one less thing to worry about. We just automatically come in.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, we're almost at our time there. So Stefan, not to put you on the spot here, but we obviously went over a lot of information. Is there 1 or 2 key takeaways that you could recap for the group?
Yeah, like I said, when you're considering air purification, it just goes back to those 4 key things: how efficient an air purifier is, and the sound level, and what it's actually doing. So the technologies that are involved with how you're cleaning the air. And I mean, I have yet to see an air purifier that can match surgically clean air on those 4 pillars of air purification. But we'll gladly do a comparison if, you know, it happens all the time where someone says, well, how does Jade or another one of our models, how does that compare to something that I saw here? And we'll gladly do a comparison for you.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, with that being said, thank you again, Stefan, for your time, the insight in the presentation, and always for the attendees for your time on this Friday. So hopefully everyone has a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thanks, guys, for joining.
Thank you.